Cowboys average second most points. Eagles are at 16th. Total yards, 25th to 3rd. Opponent's bunch, 31st to 8th. So the defense is good.
The Eagles being 25th in yards is stunning. That's
Is it,
stunning.
though?
Yeah.
Not.
It's not stunning having watched the games.
Yeah.
It would have been stunning going into the year.
Yes.
To hear that they're
Watching the games like 25th, I could see 27th.
Stunning.
Do you think the Eagles are vulnerable to a Cowboys upset?
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Not because the Cowboys have arrived. Oh, the defense is back.
But?
No, not because they're better than Philadelphia. Just because this is an NFC East game in Dallas. And look at Dak Prescott's numbers against the division and the Eagles at home. Career numbers.
This is an old
21 and 2. Yes. 6-1 against the Eagles. And beyond that, I mean, the Eagles have won 4 straight. They have been struggling. They're going to lose 2, 3, 1, 2, maybe 3 more games this year. You know,
Sure.
And so I don't think if Dallas beats them, which I think is very possible, I don't think a lot of people will think, oh my gosh, the Cowboys have arrived. The Eagles are in trouble. I won't think that.
I
think it's the NFL. Yeah, I think it's the NFL because I just saw these Eagles lose to the Giants a month ago. So it happens, and I think it's very possible it would continue to give the Cowboys life and hope. And for the Eagles, maybe it would be crazy because of their situation with A.J. Brown, but this is the NFL, any given Sunday.
So, listen, I think that the Cowboys all year, I have felt that they can beat anybody. When your offense that good, you can beat anybody. You can also lose to anybody with a defense that bad. Now, the defense appears a little bit better. So I agree with you. 3 points line is,
Yeah.
not a significant line. So I agree with your take. Here is where it would be more meaningful to me, Brew, potentially. This Eagles offense has looked, let's call it, unsteady and herky-jerky all year.
Fair.
I do think it is on the board that it looks even worse without Lane Johnson. Mm-hmm. And that would concern me greatly. That if they were a team that was already leaking oil offensively and dealing with some discontent because of it, if now they're like, man, we don't even want to call a lot of drop back passes because we don't want Jalen to get lit up. Like that element of could this Eagles offense have one of its worst performances when we've seen some bad ones, that would be highly concerning to me.
Let's delve into a compelling parallel. Why should it be a source of major apprehension for you, as an Eagles fan, to be anticipating the return of Lane Johnson, when that very same logic wasn't applied to generate widespread concern for Patrick Mahomes and his performances when his offensive line was struggling? The reasoning was consistent. A key player was slated to return, and his comeback would rectify the issues. So, if that rationale was sufficient to quell worries regarding the Chiefs and Mahomes, why should it suddenly trigger significant alarm for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts? This is where the comparison becomes perfectly illuminating, because you cannot simply pivot now and argue, well, Patrick Mahomes has a Super Bowl victory. So do the Philadelphia Eagles. So does Jalen Hurts, who is also a Super Bowl MVP. So please, enlighten me. What is the fundamental difference? I'm not entirely sure. However, of course the Eagles are susceptible to an upset by the Cowboys. In fact, I wouldn't even necessarily categorize it as a major upset. The Eagles and the Cowboys have a long-standing tradition of playing each other in fiercely competitive contests. This is especially true when both squads have their bona fide starting quarterbacks facing off. When these two teams are operating at or near full strength and are genuinely talented, you are virtually guaranteed a compelling, hard-fought game. Ultimately, the result of this single matchup doesn't necessarily signify anything definitive about the broader trajectory of either franchise. I recently created a video discussing the Cowboys, and for some reason, a segment of their fan base became particularly sensitive to my analysis because I stated that I don't place an overwhelming amount of stock in a Cowboys victory over the Eagles. I elaborated that, perhaps oddly, I'm more interested in observing how the Cowboys perform against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. The clash between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys is the very embodiment of a divisional rivalry. It perfectly encapsulates what a gritty, unpredictable divisional game looks like, perhaps more so than any other pairing in the league at this moment. We've seen this dynamic play out across the NFL, not necessarily with the Broncos this year, but in seasons past. Remember when a struggling Broncos team would defeat the Chiefs? Or when the Raiders, with a quarterback like Aiden O'Connell throwing for minimal yardage and an interim head coach at the helm, would pull off a bizarre victory against Kansas City? The league is full of these strange, unpredictable outcomes. So, of course, the Eagles are vulnerable in this specific context, and similarly, a loss in this game wouldn't signal a catastrophic failure to me either. Now, if the Eagles were to lose this game, would it be concerning? Would it be a source of frustration for their supporters? Absolutely. Without a doubt. The level of concern would be heavily influenced by the manner of the defeat. If the team simply looked bad, if you're an Eagles fan sitting at home watching and thinking, we only managed to score 9 points while the Cowboys put up 28, and we couldn't move the ball with any consistency, what is going on? Then yes, you would be right to feel profoundly uncomfortable. In that scenario, you would be clinging to the hope that Lane Johnson's return will be a panacea. However, it's crucial to note that the offense hadn't exactly been operating at peak efficiency even with Lane Johnson in the lineup. So, there is a substantial degree of vulnerability present, and it will be fascinating to observe how the Eagles' defense holds up against Dak Prescott and that Cowboys offensive unit. This Dallas offense should, in theory, look considerably more synchronized and potent in this rematch compared to their Week 1 performance. The first game of the season is always a unique beast, with teams still working out kinks. The Cowboys' defense should also be in a better state, certainly healthier, and potentially integrated with some new personnel since the season's opener. I am genuinely excited for this matchup because, as I stated, Eagles versus Cowboys is a quintessential NFL experience. If you were trying to explain to someone who had never watched football what a classic, high-stakes rivalry game looks like, you would point them to Eagles-Cowboys. You immediately grasp the intensity of the rivalry, you understand the deep-seated history, and you recognize the passion of the two fan bases. This is the NFC East. These are two of the most prominent and popular franchises in the entire league, supported by two of the largest and most fervent fan communities. It's just different. It's a monumental game. This is especially true now considering the Eagles have been positioned at the top of the conference. Even in previous years when both teams were merely fighting for relevance, the games were intense. Now the Eagles have been to multiple Super Bowls and have won one. They've already secured a victory over the Cowboys earlier this season. However, as my colleague Brew correctly pointed out, the Eagles also lost to a team led by a quarterback like Jackson Dart and the New York Giants. Did that single loss mean the Giants had arrived as a powerhouse, or that the Eagles were suddenly a bad team? No, it meant none of those things. These divisional games are critical in the process of a team discovering its true identity. We saw a similar situation with the Baltimore Ravens. You wanted to see them demonstrate a significantly higher quality of football against a team like the Cleveland Browns to prove their mettle. With the Kansas City Chiefs, as I've discussed, it's not entirely shocking for them to lose to the Broncos in a hard-fought game. But when you label a contest a must-have game, a critical moment in the season, it becomes much harder to simply dismiss a loss by chalking it up to, it was just a tough divisional game. That justification is a tougher pill to swallow. If the Eagles had a few more losses on their record and were teetering on the edge of the wild card race or in a tight battle for the division crown, then yes, you would find it much more difficult to casually write off a defeat. You have to earn the right to use that tough divisional game excuse, a privilege we saw revoked from the Buffalo Bills when they lost to the New England Patriots. The reality of the current NFL landscape is that on any given Sunday, every team is capable of beating every other team. Another analyst noted, I think the Cowboys can beat anyone. Well, the Bills can beat anyone. The Chiefs can beat anyone. The Eagles can beat anyone. The Broncos can beat anyone. The Rams can beat anyone. It's a wide-open league. Presently, the Eagles possess a more impressive portfolio of victories than any other team. They have secured a higher number of quality wins against formidable opponents. Consequently, for a game of this magnitude, I find myself without any strong, definitive predictions. This season has been remarkably unpredictable. I am primarily fascinated to see how the Eagles' defense performs against the Cowboys' offensive attack. In terms of the Eagles' offense, I must admit I don't harbor a great deal of optimism regarding its consistency and its ability to effectively problem-solve in the potential absence of a key lineman like Lane Johnson. My skepticism stems from a lack of trust in the coaching staff. I simply do not have full confidence in the strategic leadership. We have witnessed this offense deliver brilliant performances against the Giants, the Vikings, even in Week 1 against these very Cowboys, and we saw some sharp, intelligent play calling against teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There were moments of smooth, clever offensive execution, and then, seemingly without warning, that competence completely evaporates. There is no established, reliable level of consistency. When a team demonstrates such wild fluctuations in performance, the responsibility almost invariably falls upon the coaching staff. That is the primary source of the issue. This is the variable you are likely to see play out on the offensive side of the ball. I am uncertain if there is a viable solution to this problem within the confines of this current season. When you are faced with such coaching inconsistencies, your only hope is that the players possess enough raw talent to overcome those schematic and strategic limitations. But now, as the team accumulates injuries, and an offensive line that was already underperforming becomes even more depleted, you are left wondering what the offensive product will even look like. Therefore, I do not hold a strong conviction one way or the other regarding the outcome. If I had greater faith in the coaching staff, I could confidently state, I believe they will devise an effective game plan to counter these challenges. If the team were fully healthy and the offensive line was dominant, but I still distrusted the coaching, I could at least rely on the talent to establish a running game. As it stands, I am left with too many unknowns. I don't see how anyone can feel genuinely confident about what they are going to see from this Eagles offense in its current state. It is going to be a fascinating spectacle. What would ultimately impress me the most, though you cannot take lasting comfort from it due to the underlying inconsistency, would be if this Eagles offense comes out with explosive energy. If they land early punches, hit the ground running, put up impressive numbers, with Jalen Hurts looking sharp and receivers like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith creating havoc, and they hang 35 or even 28 points on the board in a decisive victory. On one hand, you could feel very encouraged, thinking, there you go, they were vulnerable to an upset, but they slammed the door shut and declared, not this year. You might even start to build confidence, believing they have finally figured some things out. But then, the specter of inconsistency and the ongoing issues on the offensive line would resurface, making you question whether to blame the players or the coaches. It's a messy, complicated diagnosis at the moment. Honestly, I believe it's just a fundamentally messy situation to evaluate. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What is your perspective on the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you believe they are vulnerable to an upset by the Cowboys? And what would such a loss signify for their season? Conversely, what would a victory mean for their prospects? Let me know your opinions in the comments section below. I read every single comment, so whether you find yourself in agreement with me or you couldn't disagree more, let me know. We can get into some lively discussions. We can engage in some spirited debates. But ultimately, let's remember to have some fun with it all. Please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to have you as a part of it. I want to build something that we all feel genuinely connected to, something we're truly excited and proud to be involved in. I believe we are well on our way to achieving that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely helps with the visibility and the platform's algorithm. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.